You want to make the call? Mr. Abd.
معاذ اثنين معاذ ستوري
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله هيا على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استووا. الله أكبر. بسم الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن لنا للآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلاها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى ولسوف يرضى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله. استغفر الله. لا إله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد. We hope and we pray everyone is doing well, inshallah ta'ala, tonight. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us among those who learn beneficial knowledge and benefit from that which they learn and are able to apply it, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes the knowledge that we learn an excuse for us and not against us on the Day of Judgment as well, Ya Rabbil Alameen. To proceed, we are continuing our series, which is the top 100 questions that every Muslim should know. Today's question, very brief, inshallah ta'ala. It is a continuation of last week's, which was talking about sins and what is the definition of a sin, etc. Today the question is, what is the most important part of a human being? What is the most important part of a human being? What do we mean by this? What parts go into a human being? Right? We're made of a body, we have a soul, we have a mind, we have a heart. Which of these is the most important? The mind? The heart? The heart? The heart is not the qalb. Al-qalb laysa al-heart. What do we mean by qalb? When we say qalb, the heart. Naam? The spiritual heart. Is it different than the physical heart? Aywa. This is still, by the way, it's still a mystery. Right? So, by the way, there's a controversial question. We don't have to get into it now. But, أين محل العقل? There's a question which is, where is the aql, the mind? Where does it reside? Because the mind is intangible. It's not your brain. Right? A lot of times we conflate the two, but these are not the same. For example, you know right now as a human being that you have a mind. Can you prove that you have a mind? Can you prove that other people have minds? You know that you have a mind. Can you prove that another person has a mind? لا, that they have a mind. العقل ليس الدماغ. We're not referring to, even an x-ray. Because here's the thing, an elephant has a brain bigger than yours. An elephant's brain is much bigger than yours. A whale's brain is much bigger than yours. But does it have a mind? These creatures, do they have minds? ليس لها عقول. لها أدمغة. They have a brain, they do not have a mind. Because the mind is completely separate than a brain. A mind is capable of higher thinking. We can ask the question why. We can infer intention. We can ask about purpose. We can do complicated math. We can do higher levels of thinking that these animals are incapable of, even though they have bigger brains. So brain does not equal mind, number one. Mind is capable of, like we said, that second-rate, third-rate, higher, elevated modes of thinking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed us with. First thing that He tells the angels, when they asked, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا, when He said, I'm going to create a khalifa on earth. They asked, are you going to, you're giving him free will? He's going to do this, he's going to do that? He says, I know that which you don't know. And then first thing he did, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, He taught Adam. So He elevated Adam, alayhi salam, through knowledge. Meaning his mind is what separated him apart even from the angels. His mental capacity, and that mindfulness of Adam alayhi salam was even higher than that of the angels. Right? Do we have a share of that from Adam alayhi salam? Yes, we do, as human beings. We're inheritors of this. Now, are our minds as capable of Adam alayhi salam? This remains to be a discussion. Right? We're not saying that. However, al-aqlu fi ad-dini, in terms of the religion, that mind that we're talking about, where does it reside? There's almost unanimity. يكاد يكون إجماعا أن محل العقل هو القلب. That this mind resides in the heart of the human being. Does not reside in the head. Does not reside in the brain. It resides in the heart. By the way, there's now studies that have shown that the heart has its own neural network. Right? And its own memory, so to speak. And its own, there's a lot of, even from a medical point of view, that they've been doing studies on the heart in terms of its leanings, in terms of a lot of these things, cutting edge. I didn't prepare that part because we're going to talk about the heart for a few weeks, inshallah ta'ala. Today we're just talking about the heart from a conception. Is the heart the most honored, the most important part of the human being? Without a doubt it is. Right? It has to be. The heart, pun not intended, but the heart is at the heart of everything that we're doing. It is, that's why it's called the heart. The Prophet ﷺ says, أَلَا إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً, there's a piece of flesh in the human being. If it's good, everything else is good. Right? The rest of the body is good. And if it's bad, if it's corrupted, everything else is corrupted. What is it? It's the heart. Everything resides there. If we know that the essence of worship, La ilaha illallah, the word ilah means the object of extreme love. From a linguistic point of view, that means that aslan, the essence of worship has to be love, and that cannot take place unless in the heart. If it seems like the whole thing was created so that the heart, in its core, in its essence, what does it love the most? And that's the essence of everything that we do. At the core of everything that we do is love. It has to be. In fact, the primary motivator for every action of the human being is love. Let me repeat this again. The core motivation for everything that you do as a human being is love, which means it takes place in the heart. A person can ask, even murder, we said every action of a human being. Murder, when a person commits murder, is there at its core love? The answer is yes. When a person robs and he steals money and he kills the person that he's robbing, and it's because at the core he loved whatever he was taking from that person more than that person's life. Which means he's deeming, by the way, this is why in Islam, a person who does such an act is put to death. Because their humanity is lost. When you value anything more than another human's life, your humanity is gone. There's no safety for you among other, and there's no safety for other human beings with you amongst them. Which means it will save more lives by getting rid of that one, because you've lost your own humanity. وَهَكَذَا جَمِيعَ الْأَعْمَالِ. Everything. When a person lies, it's because they love something, protecting whatever it is that they do, more than they love something else, which is being honest, truth, trustworthy, etc. The essence of everything that a person does, at whatever core, even when we see that it's evil, the essence of it though is love. They loved something more than something else. And when we put love, that wrong love, when we love something that we shouldn't love more than something else, this is when things become evil and good. Our limbs, our extremities, our eyes, our ears, our tongue, all of our actions follow the heart and not the other way around. Now there's a feedback loop. But the essence of it is that the heart is the originator and everything else follows. Yet the heart is also a vessel. Al-qalbu, lughatan, is also a vessel. It can be filled with something, it can be emptied. Right? Most of what transpires, we have a verse in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. And know that Allah comes in between a person and his heart. There's a verse, this is in Surah Al-Anfal, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَجِيبُوا لِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. O you who have believed, answer the call of Allah and His Messenger when He calls you, meaning here specifically the Messenger ﷺ, to that which gives you life. And know that Allah comes in between a man and his heart. So the heart is now almost a separate entity from you as a human being, which also brings up a lot of issues and a lot of conceptual issues. But the idea is that Allah comes in between a person and his heart, meaning in between a person and his guidance, between that which is best for him, which will give him life. Because the heart is the essence of life. It's the originator of life, both in a physical sense, when your heart stops, your life stops, and your spiritual life, because when your spiritual heart dies, spiritually you're also dead. This is why the difference between a person who remembers Allah and doesn't is like a person who's alive and dead. Because spiritual life is also in the heart. So, if Allah comes in between a person and their heart, meaning He's coming in between them and their guidance. Which is why, based upon this verse, they said, when a person knows their heart, they will consequently know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person is ignorant of their heart, they will be ignorant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you know yourself, the core of yourself, your heart, then you will know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَا تَكُونُوا in the verses in Surah Al-Hashr, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. Do not be like those who forgot Allah, so made them forget themselves. Meaning there's a relationship between knowing yourself and knowing Allah. Knowing my heart and knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today we're going to talk about how can we better know ourselves so that in return we can know Allah. And specifically knowing our hearts. Your heart is a vessel. In some narrations it's also mentioned that it is similar to a fortress. Right? Every fortress, on the inside, it can be occupied or unoccupied. If a person's heart is unoccupied, shaitan will try to fill it up. If shaitan fills up the heart, khalas. It's game over. There's little hope for that heart at that time. It can be remedied, but it's very difficult. On the flip side, when the heart is full of iman, of taqwa, of things, good deeds that we're doing, we're filling up with something that's good, it's very hard for shaitan to occupy it because it's already occupied. He can't come in because it's already full. The similitude of this is how some scholars mention shaitan is like a dog. Okay? And shaitan will always try to come, like a dog. By the way, the example of shaitan being like a dog was used by Umar ibn Khattab anhu, where he says, a man came to him and he says, "Yakhi, shaitan keeps on whispering to me, I don't know how to get rid of him." And he says, know that shaitan is like a dog. He'll keep on trying to come back like a dog. You know what I mean? Just keep on coming. And what do you do when a dog, let's say you're walking here, we're talking about modern day and age, and there's a dog that keeps on bothering you. If you try to keep on messing with the dog and shooing him away, the dog is just going to keep on coming back. He says, instead, seek help with the owner of the dog. Every dog has an owner. Instead of messing with the dog himself. You don't want to mess with the dog himself. You don't lower yourself to that level, but seek help from the owner of the dog. How do you seek? Who's the owner of shaitan? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why we say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Seek refuge in Allah from the evil shaitan. And Allah will protect you, suffice. He's the owner, He'll put him on His leash. And he won't affect you. But if you keep on messing with the dog directly, it's going to keep on happening. It's a never-ending game, so to speak. So this is one example. Another problem with the example of the dog is that if you have something that the dog wants, the dog is not going to leave you alone. Like imagine you're carrying like a nice piece of meat, right? And the dog is hungry. And you shoo the dog away. Is the dog going to shoo away or is he going to see the meat? He's going to keep on coming back. It says, وَهَكَذَا الْقَلْبَ الْخَالِي. Similar to this is that empty heart. That empty heart is like a fresh piece of meat for that dog. Because he sees something he can get into. He's like, that's a fresh target. If you have the propensity to let shaitan in, shaitan is not going to let you alone. But if your heart is full, shaitan knows that he can't really mess with you that much and eventually he will shoo away. Similar to the dog. If you don't have anything that the dog wants that is going to come up, you can shoo him away. You still should seek help with the owner, but you can kind of shoo him away. But when there's nothing that the dog wants something, but it doesn't find it on you, he's going to eventually leave you alone and go to someone else. So we have to fortify our hearts in that way to protect them from shaitan. So going back to, this is the example of shaitan being like that of a dog and how we can fortify ourselves. Additionally, so we fill up our hearts with something that shaitan doesn't want, or we fill it up and occupy it with something good. So it's not an empty heart. Number two, we fortify the entrances to the heart. There are entrances into the heart, just like there's blood vessels that feed it. There are entrances to the spiritual heart. How many entrances are there? There are as many entrances to the spiritual heart as there are characteristics of individuals. Meaning there are more than we can count. Any type of human characteristic there is, this is potentially an entryway for shaitan. So there's a lot of entrances that we have to guard. Which is why fortifying our character is a primary method of defending ourselves from shaitan. Fortifying our character. Anger is an entrance for shaitan. That's part of my character. Shaitan will try to exploit that. So, is dhikr enough to protect ourselves from shaitan? It should be, provided the person has good character. But if a person says, I'm not going to remedy myself from bad anger, but I'm going to make dhikr, is it going to work? That's like leaving the door open, but saying, I have a really good shotgun inside my house. But I'm going to leave the door open so that the enemy can come in. That's foolish. Yes, you should fortify yourself, but also close the door. That's a door that shaitan is going to continue to exploit. This is why fortifying good character is an integral and a priority for every Muslim to protect themselves from being exploited by shaitan and from that heart. So, what are some of these characteristics? Man, count. We can make the list would be never ending. Greed, desire, hasad, jealousy, envy, pride, arrogance, belittling others, looking down, tribalism, nationalism, ethnocentrism, racism, whatever ism. There's so many of these that you can count. Even tribalism, not even when it comes to an ethnicity. Unfortunately, we had even tribalism when it came to like a madhab. You had people who were like, we're Shafi'is, we will never marry our daughter to a Hanafi. Are you serious? This is terrible. And wallah, I've heard this. Back in the day, my grandfather would tell me stories of how even living in Palestine, a lot of them were Shafi'is, but there was a minority of Hanafis that was living there, right? And he said he ran into this problem. Growing up, this would happen. Alhamdulillah, now people have moved on, and I think part of it is ignorance, but part of it is also blissful. A lot of people don't even know what madhab they belong to. But then, alhamdulillah, even if when they know, they've kind of surpassed these allegiances which shouldn't have been there. It's supposed to help you become a better Muslim, not the other way around, right? So you have these issues of like allegiances to especially when it leads to these differing among people. We talked about anger, harshness. There's a narration, one of the tabi'een, second generation, he says, there's a narration attributed to Shaitan himself where he says that if somebody is like iron, we will try to melt him away, meaning he's hadid. إذا كان الرجل حديدا أذبناه. Right? We will try to melt him away, like just flame him. So hadid here, in Arabic, it's used to describe a person who's very tough and rough, and he gets angry quickly. So it says that Shaitan will exploit this nature, this characteristic. So whatever characteristic we have as individuals, know that Shaitan will try to exploit it. This is why the exploitation of Shaitan differs from person to person. If a person has a hunger, an innate hunger for life. We're not talking about hunger for food. It could be hunger for food, and Shaitan will try to exploit that. But it could even be desire, greed, lust, forgetfulness, carelessness, whatever characteristic there is of a human being. This is a potential entryway for Shaitan into the person's heart. So, one of the best things that we can do is try to fortify our hearts from any ill manners, any ill characteristics that exist in order for us to actually better protect ourselves. There's an entrance, even it could be in the love of beauty. Right? At-tazyin. People like to beautify themselves. This could be an entryway for Shaitan. Beautify their homes, could be an entryway for Shaitan. Beautify, you name it. It could be a desire for the dunya. It could be the opposite true, where a person, Shaitan could exploit their poverty. Shaitan could try to exploit their wealth. Shaitan could try to exploit whatever it is. It could be even a shaba. So we said a hungry. The opposite of that is being satiated. Not contentment. Contentment is good, right? It is that balance. But being satiated to the point where you're so full that it causes you to become lazy and lethargic, and you're not pursuing the things. You're like, yeah, in terms of Islam, I'm good. I pray my 5 daily prayers. I don't need to do more. Right? Okay, why? You can do more. But it becomes held back almost. Ajala, being in a hurry. There's a hadith of the Prophet where he says, Al-ajalatu min ash-shaytan, wat-ta'anni min ar-Rahman. Ajala, being quick, always in a hurry, is from Shaitan. Why? Because it causes the person not to think before they do things. Think before you act. That doesn't exist. And this is from Shaitan. He wants you to almost trip over the things that you're doing because you're always in a hurry, you're always quick. This is why taking your time is, the opposite is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is from God. Now, can that be done in an extreme as well? Yes. Where the person takes too much time and now they're late, they're putting off things that they shouldn't be putting off, they're not doing things that they should be doing on time, etc. Love of wealth can cause a person to fear poverty to the extreme where they no longer give in charity, they're no longer generous, they're stingy, they don't have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc. There are extremes in terms of religiosity. that shaitan will definitely exploit. He will tell people, brother, the only way that you can be religious is if your beard is all the way down to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's not, you don't understand what I'm saying? Like, this is a way that shaitan will try to exploit. Right? Your dress has to be in a certain way. Your this has to be in a certain way. All these things are not correct. There's extremism in religion, especially in theological issues. You'll have people debating fine issues that have no bearing whatsoever on the actions of the human being. Allah's not going to ask you about this on the Day of Judgment. Why are we discussing this? Now, for the scholarly level, okay, I understand. Maybe to put off the doubts that people will have. But in terms of, I'll give you like an example. I mentioned this before. When we mentioned some people denied about the books, the book of deed. وَكُلَّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ وَنُخْرِجْ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ كِتَابًا يَلْقَاهُ مَنْشُورًا. Every person will have that طائر, the flying object, around their neck. It's actually the book of their deeds. And on the Day of Judgment, the book will be laid and they'll be reading it. Some people denied this. Some of the kuffar, the disbelievers, because you can't deny a part of the Quran and then continue to be a believer. So said, this is impossible. You expect us to believe that there's a book large enough to fit around a person's neck, but at the same time contain the information of everything about the human's life? This is impossible. So they denied it based upon their own limited intellect. Even though now we know intellectually, not only is this possible, it will contain not only your life, but the lives of many other people. And in video. Like if I put a little data, on a USB drive and I hang it around your neck, would it hang around your neck completely fine? How much data could I put hanging around somebody's neck? Terabytes of data. Your life, could it be contained in terabytes of data if it was text? Sure. Very easily. You know how much when we're talking about terabytes of data, and it's and it's so vast, especially if it's text. So now we know this is not an impossibility. It's very well possible, right? But there were people limited by their own imaginations and whatnot that denied this. So the problem is, when we try to reject or accept based upon our limited capacities, this can be a problem. When we don't understand what is it that I'm limiting myself based off of? My imagination, my experience? If it's logically acceptable, it's acceptable. It's not a problem. So you'll have people debating these fine theological issues based upon their limited experiences, and this is a faulty. It's very difficult to go down that route because you have no basis to do these. Fortifying these entrances means that the person knows themselves better. Because there's no way for me to better myself until I know myself. So if I'm to fortify these entrances from shaitan, I have to know. Do I have an anger issue? Yes. Is shaitan exploiting it? Yes. Then I need to do something about it. But also for me to do something about it, I have to know that beforehand. Which means, if I don't know it, somebody has to tell me. This is the importance of giving each other good advice. This is the importance of us reviewing ourselves, thinking, why did this happen? What am I doing? Is it something that I'm doing? Then maybe I need to fix it about myself. What can I do better? That self-review is now necessary. So like we said, knowing thyself. And then once you know yourself, then you can start to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better. But it has to start with knowing yourself, knowing your heart, knowing what goes into it. Fortifying the entrances, then fortifying the inside. The dhikr of Allah, remembrance of Allah, which is one of the core functions of the heart, when it takes place, it fortifies the heart spiritually. Because, here's the thing, shaitan is sneaky. That's why he's waswas khannas. Literally, one of the meanings in Arabic is that he sneaks. He works, he's constantly working. But the benefit on our side is that I fortified the entrances. He might still get in. He might have, you'll have a passing thought from shaitan. You'll have a passing, instigation from shaitan. That's when dhikr comes in, that it'll expel him out. he'll still find a way in. So don't think that, okay, I fortified myself, kada, I'm shaitan proof. La. But that's the benefit of now dhikr, right? That, because it'll expel him out. So perfecting our character, continue to making dhikr, will actually clear it up. Right? Does this happen? Yes. How do we know this happens? Look at yourself, look at ourselves. I shouldn't say yourself. I'm in this boat too. As soon as we start praying, where does our mind go? And how quick is our mind to go to something else completely other than the salah that we're supposed to be focusing on now? And Allah al-Musta'an, this is something that's universal in human beings, right? And how quick. Salah technically is dhikr, but we still have to fortify ourselves and be cognizant and aware and make that effort, right, to get shaitan out. Remember, in our hearts is almost the origin of almost every deed that we do. Luckily, fortunately for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hold us accountable to those fleeting thoughts, passing instigations of shaitan. We're not held accountable. We are held accountable based upon the things that we have a genuine intention to do. Not the thought of it, but the genuine intention to do. We call this azima. How do we know this? Because all of this is in the heart. And so the deeds of the heart we are held accountable for when the heart genuinely intends to do it. But if it's a fleeting moment, fleeting thought, an idea, whatever, these are forgiven, inshaAllah ta'ala. You're not held accountable for those. You're held accountable for the things that you dwell upon, the things that you genuinely intend on doing. How do we know this? There's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says, القاتل إذا التقى المسلمان بسيفيهما فالقاتل مقتول في النار. This is an authentic hadith and it's a very scary one. He says, if the two Muslims meet with their swords, then the killer and the killed are both in the hellfire. So the companion said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, this doesn't make sense. Right? علمنا يعني القاتل علمنا. The killer, we know why he's in the hellfire, because he's a killer. But what about the person who was murdered? Why is he in the hellfire? Exactly. لأنه عزم على قتل أخيه. And he uses the word عزم because he had that genuine intention to kill his brother. But he just failed. Right? Because it was a genuine intention. Now this is when they're meeting unjustly. Not self-defense. We're not talking about like one was a raider and he was protecting his life or property. That's completely different. We're talking about both of them have that genuine, they meet with their swords, they're in a battle, whatever is going on. It's terrible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and help us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. So because it was a genuine, sincere intention, those we are held accountable for. So we have to be very careful with our hearts. This is why the opposite is true. If I have a genuine, sincere intention to do something good, I get rewarded for it, even if I don't actually carry it out. Because it's a genuine, sincere intention. And when I carry it out, now it's multiplied times 10 and up to 700. And this is why if I have a genuine intention to do something wrong and I stop, I get rewarded if I stop myself. So inshallah ta'ala, with these types of things, we have to, you know what I mean, know that difference and then realize that our hearts are not in our hands, they're in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why one of the most frequent du'as that the Prophet ﷺ made, and inshallah ta'ala we'll end with this hadith, narrated by Aisha anha, so she knows what she's talking about. She says, one of the most frequent du'as that I heard the Prophet ﷺ make was, Allahumma ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Oh Allah, the changer of the hearts. And he uses muqallib because that's what the qalb does, the hearts. It changes. One of the meanings of it is that it switches, it changes. Make my heart firm upon your deen, the faith. Allahumma musarrif al-qulub, sarrif qulubana ala ta'atik. Oh Allah, the changer of the hearts, make my hearts firm upon your obedience. This is one of the most frequent du'as of the Prophet. Now imagine if the Prophet, who has the most purest of hearts of all of mankind, is asking for this, then what about us? You know, then our hearts need it obviously much more. So inshallah ta'ala, when you ask Allah, who in His heart, right? The Prophet ﷺ says, the hearts are between the two fingers of Allah and He changes them however He wants. And another hadith, He says, the example of the changing of the hearts is like that of a feather in an open land. في أرض فلا. The feather just keeps on moving about by the wind. That's how our hearts are, right? Constantly changing, moving about. So we have to be very careful with what happens to our own hearts. Yeah, scary stuff indeed. So there are three types of hearts, ultimately. One that is completely fortified, solid from the inside, it's full. Right? There's no, even if shaitan gets through the fortifications, tries to get inside, there's barely any room for him to get in, because the heart is full of iman, taqwa, ibadat, acts of worship, etc. That heart is safe, inshallah ta'ala. Because the person is constantly working on it, right? It's not like, okay, I built my heart up, now I can leave it alone. No, this is constant work. And then the opposite, one that's completely unfortified, completely empty or full of shahawat, shaitan can easily pass in, pass through. And then you have the third type, which is where there's a constant battle, a push and shove, right? There's a push and pull. The angel is trying to help you against shaitan, the angelic side. You yourself, your conscious, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helping you, and shaitan, his enemies, and all of the things that he's trying to exploit. That constant battle that most of us go through, that's also the heart. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us with our hearts, that we can build them up to where we're in that first category, inshallah ta'ala, not that constant battle, and that we fortify them, we fill them up, Ya Rabbil Alameen, and that we fortify them. Like we said, because, inshallah ta'ala, at this point, the character of the believer is so important. We will have, inshallah ta'ala, a few questions dedicated purely to character, inshallah ta'ala, and how to better it, like from the essence, not specific just characteristics, but also the essence of that, and bettering ourselves, inshallah ta'ala. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Yeah. Yeah, this is a good question. I don't think we have enough time to answer that tonight. The nafs, right, that inner self, and the heart. Is there a relationship, or are they the one and the same? This is a long discussion, هذا. Yeah. The self. There's definitely an overlap, I will tell you this. There's an overlap between the two. Naam? Yeah, inshallah ta'ala. Yes. Yes. Peace. No. Yeah, so what does the word fu'ad mean? And it's a heart in a state of peace, like you said. Yeah, Allahu A'lam. With these types of definitions, it becomes very, there's a lot that can be said, inshallah ta'ala. No. Sure. Yeah, of course.
That's the reason heart is mentioned as a qalb, whether it's a state of peace or at peace.
Yeah.
But still, it's the mind.
Yes.
That basically changes it, and then the forehead and all that will be
Yes.
Yes.
The prefrontal cortex. Yeah.
Yeah. That was that you have to really, the forehead is the one that controls the emotions and everything. So you have to ultimately still it's a control through the nasi.
100%. Yeah. The relationship between the head, the brain, and the heart. That heart-brain connection Even medically, there's a lot that's been written about it. 100%. But so he's saying there's an overlap. So like even my emotional state, can it affect my heart, my physical heart? 100%. Yes. So there's an overlap. So look at like these as circles, right? We have like the spiritual circle, and it's going to overlap with the physical, but they're not completely overlapping. And your emotional and mental and all these different circles are converging. There's definitely convergence, but they're not one and the same. But they do affect each other.
But you feel, because whatever is going through the mind,
You feel it.
felt through the heart.
100%. Yeah, yeah,
The call was maybe, I think it was more
yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course. But even your mental state, like you can imagine, they do these exercises of meditation and imagining yourself, you know what I mean, or being thankful and what physical manifestations happen in the body, and there's definitely these are observable. So yeah. On the yeah, he's pointing to his head. Yeah. Additional research. Uh-huh. The physical heart. Yeah. No. Yeah. No, yeah, yeah. به فؤادك نعم yeah. Your فؤاد. But then he also says وَنَزَّلَهُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. So referring to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both terms are used. Yeah. خلاص, well, I'll put it here. We'll do research on this more, inshallah ta'ala. والأبصار والأفئدة. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, خلاص. I'm putting it down.
That's what Sheikh Rahman, when he was giving the talk to
Content.
basically he mentioned that wherever the fuad has come, it always has come in a state of comfort, peace. So whereas qalb has come into different,
Yeah.
always in a
Different contexts.
under the stress,
خلاص, we'll look that up inshallah ta'ala.
the qalb is sadiq, and
Yeah, it's a very fine point, but we'll find it inshallah. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're MashaAllah. That's what you think though. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. 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 He passed out. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, I'm with you. صح. Well, it's still emerging. We're learning. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, but I understand. Yeah, and in terms of spiritual side of things, yeah, yeah. Not necessarily. No, no, no. Yeah, it's the qalb. Yeah, the heart. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. And is there an overlap between the two? Right. Is it that? Well, I'm asking that as a question. I don't have the answer. You know, even you know what I mean. I'm not saying no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is the spiritual heart the same as the physical heart? Because what's the mind, right? Even from a non-Muslim perspective, there's a belief in the mind, right? This is not a. But can you quantify it? Do you know where it is? Do you know? It's intangible. We understand this, right? So we don't have to. It doesn't have to have a tangible equivalence. That's the point, I think, from today's discussion. Is that we're talking about the intangible heart. We call it the spiritual heart. Yeah, but it's the intangible, 100%. Yeah. لا. But is there an overlap? So there's a relationship, right? There's a. Yeah, yeah, we do. And the Prophet ﷺ says there's a piece of flesh, and then just mudghah, right? Because we're still calling it a heart. But is there a complete overlap? لا. It's more than just the flesh.
Just to add with that, maybe when Iqbal, the poet,
Uh-huh.
mentioned about the aql and the ishq. Aql is the mind that just calculates whether this is something I would do, something.
Rational thought, yeah.
And when if they feel that something will harm, they would not. So one of his the poet was that it was the ishq of Ibrahim that made him jump into the fire. Had he been thinking with the aql, he would not have done that.
Yeah, صح.
So that's the concept between the heart. How does so the when aql to a level that's a mind, there's something that keep to, and then beyond that, aql could not think. Then that state of that is the state of the heart. When the heart, the way the heart thinks, it does not think of benefits, loss, or when they think something needs to be done and they have a faith into it, they just jump in. So that's what the is in Akal hai mehbit tamashaye lage abhi. So he said that the ishq was the one that made him to jump into the fire, and then the Akal was just thinking, oh, don't. So that's what the concept is, mind. But even with the mind, to differentiate, till that's the reason forehead is the one which has the emotions and all. Sometimes you control it like that. It comes kind of a different state from that perspective.
Riyadha. So literally, it's the word that's used is exercise. If you think of your heart as a muscle, you got to exercise it. Yeah, exactly. That's one of them. There's many that we'll talk about the exercises inshallah ta'ala. But yeah, there's spiritual cardio. Literally, that's what I'm calling it. Yeah, yeah. Spiritual cardio. Yeah, yeah. صح. Yeah. Inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullah khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.